The late afternoon light filtered through the oak trees of Asheville's West End, painting soft amber streaks across the quiet neighborhood. It was a warm spring Saturday, one of those deceptively peaceful days where everything looked still but felt slightly off. The air smelled of damp mulch and honeysuckle, and the faint sound of children laughing drifted over fences, mixing with the distant whir of a lawnmower. Claire Whitmore stood beneath the white and blue streamers strung above Mrs. Green's backyard, her hands folded over a paper plate of untouched. The house was alive with conversation and music, guests swaying to a nostalgic 90s playlist. But Claire wasn't really listening. Her eyes kept drifting toward the kids playing on the grass, a blur of color, movement, and echoes of the past. She was 60 now, still graceful despite the gentle stoop in her shoulder. Her silver hair was pulled into a low bun beneath a straw hat, and the fine lines around her eyes told stories no one dared ask about. Most people had stopped asking decades ago. Her husband, Henry, stood near the grill talking with Mr. Green, smiling, nodding, doing his best. Claire envied him sometimes, how he had managed to tuck the pain somewhere quiet. She never could. They'd been invited out of neighborly obligation. The Greens had moved onto the street only 2 years earlier and insisted the Whitmores come to their son Tyler's birthday party. Just a backyard get-together, Mrs. Green, with cake and burgers and kids running wild. Claire had hesitated, but Henry had said yes. It was only a few blocks away. The backyard smelled of hot dogs. Somewhere in the kitchen, a glass was dropped, followed by a chorus of laughter. Claire smiled faintly, politely, but her mind had already drifted again, 30 years back. 3 boys, identical, laughter ringing through the yard, a sprinkler arching over the lawn, green checkered overalls with bright yellow straps, the sound of bare feet slapping concrete as they chased each other past the rose bushes. Lucas, Caleb, Micah. They had vanished on a day. Claire blinked and swallowed the ache rising in her throat. She turned her gaze to the far end of the lawn where the patio door slid open. A man stepped out, holding the hand of a small boy. Claire didn't recognize either of them. The man was tall, late 30s, with a calm expression and a slight limp. The boy looked to be about 8, dressed in green checkered overalls with yellow straps over a long-sleeved cream shirt. His black curly hair bounced with each step as he broke free from his father's grip and ran toward the children playing tag. The world went silent. Claire's fingers tightened on her paper plate. Her breath hitched. A roaring filled her ears like static from an old radio. The boy passed just a few feet away, laughing. She dropped the plate. The paper fluttered to the grass, frosting side down. Her feet moved before her mind caught up. She crossed the yard in 10 long strides, stopping the boy with a gentle but firm hand on his shoulder. The child turned, startled, eyes wide. Claire's voice barely registered above the hum in her ears. "Where did you get those clothes?" Her hand hovered near his shoulder strap. Her fingers trembled. The boy recoiled. "Daddy!" he cried, scrambling away from her. The man appeared instantly protective and concerned, stepping between Claire and his son. "Is something wrong?" he asked. His voice was steady, but his eyes narrowed. Claire couldn't speak. "She touched me," the boy said, clinging to his father. "She scared me." Henry appeared beside her a second later. "Claire," he said gently, "what's going on?" Claire turned to him, her eyes glazed. His clothes, they're exactly the same. Green overalls, yellow straps, long sleeves, just like the boys wore that day, just like them. The man looked confused, then glanced down at his son's outfit. "I got them at a store downtown a few months ago. I didn't know." Henry extended a calming hand. "It's okay. I'm sorry, my wife didn't mean any harm. It's just our sons went missing 30 years ago. They were triplets, and they wore clothes exactly like those the day they disappeared." The lawn went quiet. Several conversations stopped mid-sentence. Heads turned. Mrs. Green stepped forward. Everyone in the neighborhood knows the story. It was all over the news, 3 identical boys, gone without a trace. The man's eyes softened. "I'm so sorry," he said, kneeling beside his son. "We just moved here." I had no idea. Claire was still staring at the boy, a mix of recognition and disbelief in her expression. Henry gently took her arm. "Let's go home," he whispered. "Please." Claire didn't resist. As Henry guided her toward the gate, the scent of grilled meat and the sound of distant laughter faded behind them. The sun had dipped lower, casting longer shadows on the pavement. Claire walked as if underwater, her mind turning. Green overalls, yellow straps, curly hair. No, it wasn't possible. Was it? Inside their house on Hazelwood Avenue, the silence was thick. Henry made tea. Claire sat on the sofa, hands folded in her lap. The soft ticking of the wall clock was the only sound. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "You have nothing to apologize," gently, handing her the mug. "I saw the outfit, too. It was like seeing a ghost." Claire stared at the tea, then looked up slowly. "I need to see the photo again, the one from that morning, the last day." Henry hesitated. "It's in the attic, in the box. Please." 10 minutes later, he returned with a cardboard box covered in dust. The sides were soft from age. Claire helped him lift the flaps. Inside were tiny shoes, faded drawings, 3 identical teddy bears, and a photo album bound in worn leather. They turned the pages carefully. There, 3 pages in, was the photo. Lucas, Caleb, and Micah stood shoulder to shoulder, arms wrapped around each other. Their smiles were wide, full of joy, and they were wearing the same clothes Claire had seen just an hour ago. The green was a little darker, the checkered pattern slightly bolder, but the straps were yellow, the shirts long-sleeved, and behind them, just visible in the corner of the photo, was a red Cadillac parked across the street. Claire leaned closer, heart hammering. "That's Mr. Colton's car," she said, her voice. "Raymond Colton, their teacher." Henry frowned. "Are you sure?" "I remember because Lucas was obsessed with it. He said it looked like a spaceship." Henry reached into the box again, pulling out the original Kodak envelope with the negatives still inside. He flipped it over. The development date was stamped clearly. 2 days after the boys disappeared, he said. This was taken that morning. Claire stared at the photo, chills crawling across her arms. "But that doesn't make sense," she whispered. "Raymond Colton left town before they vanished. The school threw him a farewell party. He was gone. Everyone said so." Henry sat beside her, eyes never leaving the photo. "Then why was his car parked outside our house that morning?" The next morning, Claire rose before the sun touched the tops of the Blue Ridge Mountains. She moved through the kitchen barefoot, the floorboards creaking beneath her as she placed the kettle on the stove. The house was quiet, still draped in that soft morning silence that always came just before birdsong. She hadn't slept much. The image of the boy in the overalls and the photo in the album looped endlessly in her mind, like a scratched vinyl record. There had been so many dreams over the years, phantom sounds of laughter, the rustling of 3 small bodies climbing onto her bed, the faint scent of mud and apple shampoo. But this was different. This wasn't a dream. That Cadillac had been there. It had been in front of their house that same morning, that same hour. She poured boiling water into her mug, watching the steam curl upward, and leaned against the counter, clutching it for warmth and stability. From the hallway, Henry appeared, his hair sticking out in soft tufts. He tied the robe around his waist, rubbed sleep from his eyes, and kissed her temple. "You've been up long?" "Didn't sleep," she said softly. "You?" "A bit." They sat at the small breakfast table by the window. Outside, the leaves trembled in the early breeze. A blue jay landed on the porch railing and let out a sharp cry before darting off. Henry cleared his throat. "You've been thinking about the photo?" Claire. "I keep going back to it, Henry. That car doesn't belong there. Raymond Colton said he was gone. He told the school he was moving states. Remember the goodbye assembly? And the kids made that giant card. Lucas even wrote him a message in crayon. Don't forget us, Mr. S. Henry offered a faint smile. Lucas always had the biggest heart. Claire ran a finger along the rim of her mug. And the biggest imagination. He believed Colton's Cadillac could fly. She paused, then looked up. Do you remember what the police said about Colton back then? They said he'd moved out of the area 2 weeks earlier, that he had no reason to be investigated. But we never saw a moving truck, never said goodbye properly. No one saw him leave. Henry hesitated. He wasn't a suspect. Claire's voice was firmer now. He should have been. They spent the afternoon going through old belongings. The attic, long neglected, smelled of cedar and insulation. Dust danced in the slivers of light coming through the small, gabled window. Claire climbed the wooden ladder with care, Henry right behind her. They opened each box like it was sacred. There were worn-out sneakers with Velcro straps, paper crowns from birthday parties, faded superhero bedsheets, and an old Polaroid camera with a strip of undeveloped film still inside. Claire held up one small object, a red toy car missing one of its wheels. This was Caleb's. He never let the others touch it. Henry nodded, picking up a crumpled drawing of 3 stick figures beneath a rainbow. Micah drew this. That was supposed to be the 3 of them under a spaceship. He smiled faintly. He said they were going to Mars. As they sorted through the boxes, Claire suddenly gasped. She pulled out an envelope. Inside were several letters written in a child's scrawl addressed to future me. Each was signed by one of the boys. She read one aloud, her voice trembling. Dear future me, I hope we're still triplets and didn't turn into aliens. I want to be a race car driver or a teacher. If we have a dog, I hope he's named Waffles. Love, Lucas. Claire pressed the paper to her chest, eyes shut tight. Henry reached out, placing a hand over hers. I'm still their mother, she whispered, even if they're not little anymore, even if they don't remember me. Later that evening, they sat side by side on the living room couch, the photo album resting open between them. Claire traced the edges of the image again. I can't believe we missed this, she said. You didn't miss it, Henry said. You saw it now. That has to mean something. They had reviewed the case 1,000 times before. Over the years, Claire had met with local police, cold case units, even amateur detectives who'd offered theories. Some said the boys were taken across the border. Others claimed a child trafficking ring had moved through North Carolina in the early 80s. There had been phone calls from supposed psychics, letters from people claiming to be one of the boys, and cruel hoaxes that ended in heartbreak. But never anything like this, never something so tangible, a photo with something out of place. Claire got up and opened the cabinet near the fireplace. She pulled out a worn binder labeled Case Notes. Inside were decades of articles, clippings, photocopied reports, and timelines. She flipped through it like it was muscle memory. Do you remember Sandra Ellison? The woman from the school board? Henry asked. She worked with Colton for years. If anyone knew where he went after Oak Ridge, it was her. Henry looked at her. You want to call her? She might know something. That night, Claire stood at the window of their bedroom, staring into the dark. Streetlights cast long golden halos over the pavement. A breeze shifted the wind chimes on the porch, their soft clinking like distant bells in a dream. She touched her necklace, a simple gold chain with 3 tiny birthstone pendants, 1 green, 1 blue, 1 amber. The boys' favorite colors. She whispered their names like a prayer. Lucas, Caleb, Micah. They would be 36 now. Did they remember anything? Did they still dream in triplicate? Behind her, the bedroom was dimly lit. Henry had already turned in, the soft rise and fall of his breath the only sound. Claire didn't sleep. She lay awake watching the ceiling, waiting for morning. It was the email from Sandra Ellison that shifted everything. Claire had written to her the night before. keeping the message short and polite, trying not. She didn't expect a reply until at least the weekend. But by mid-morning Sunday, there it was in her inbox. Subject, Raymond Colton Clare. Of course I remember you. And yes, I remember Raymond very well. He never transferred to another school, if that's what you're wondering. There was no formal exit paperwork filed with the district. It was like he disappeared. I heard later he had some sort of family tragedy and left town abruptly. Someone told me years ago that he started a private farm for children in western North Carolina, something to do with helping immigrant youth. I can't confirm that, though. The name that stuck with me was Colton's Haven for Hope. Let me know if you need anything else. Sandra Clare stared at the screen, heart pounding. Colton's Haven for Hope. A farm for children in this very state, she told Henry during breakfast. He listened quietly, nodding as she read Sandra's message aloud. "Do you think he's still alive?" Claire asked. "He'd be almost 70 now. And still running a farm?" Henry shrugged. "Maybe. Or maybe someone else is using his name." Claire got up from the table, walked to the office, and began typing. A simple Google search pulled up a sparse but active website. Colton's Haven for Hope. Rebuilding Young Lives Through Agriculture. The homepage was minimal, just a few smiling photos of boys working in gardens, feeding goats, and painting fences. Most looked between 8 and 14 years old. There were no surnames listed, no staff bios. Just one short paragraph. Colton's Haven for Hope is a nonprofit dedicated to uplifting underprivileged youth through agricultural education, mentorship, and hands-on training. Founded by educator Raymond Colton in 1992. Claire leaned closer. There, in one of the gallery images. 3 older boys, maybe late teens or early 20s, standing beside a tractor, arms around each other's shoulders. 2 of them looked identical. Black curly hair, same eyebrows, same build, same wide, too bright smile. She clicked to enlarge the image. The caption read, "Our senior mentors, Ferdinand, Diego, and staff." Claire's heart stopped. Ferdinand and Diego. Triplets were never mentioned in the write-up, but those boys were no ordinary brothers. She knew that face. Henry entered the room. "What is it?" She pointed at the screen. "Look." He squinted. His expression slowly changed. "My God." Claire grabbed her phone and snapped a photo of the screen. "I have to go there," she said. "We both do." Henry hesitated. "We don't want to just show up. There's no phone number, just an email, and they might never reply. What if we wait and it's too late?" "Claire." "They're alive, Henry." They arrived at the farm just past noon. A wooden sign greeted them at the end of a gravel road. Colton's Haven for Hope Private Property. Visitors by appointment only. Claire stepped out of the car and inhaled sharply. The air smelled of damp soil and wood smoke. The wind carried the sound of laughter and lowing cattle from somewhere beyond the barn. A young man emerged from a stable, wiping his hands on a towel. "Can I help you?" "We're looking for Raymond Colton," Claire said. "We sent an email but haven't received a response." The man nodded. "Mr. Colton's at the county agricultural fair today with most of the staff, but I can give you a tour if you want." Claire looked to Henry. He nodded slowly. "Yes," she said. "We'd like that." The tour was peaceful, almost too peaceful. Children's paintings hung from the barn walls. Laughter echoed from the far field, where kids played soccer beside a pen of goats. Everything looked wholesome, normal, good. And yet beneath it all, Claire felt the hum of something buried. In one of the learning barns, the young man introduced them to the art coordinator, Ferdinand. Claire's breath caught. He was older now, probably mid-30s, but the face was unmistakable. The smile, the thick curls, even the way he gestured with his hands as he spoke. "Nice to meet you," Ferdinand, extending a hand. Claire shook it. Her fingers trembled. "I used to be one of the kids here," he said with pride. Mr. Colton took me in when I was 6. Saved me, really. Do you remember anything before that? Ferdinand paused. No, just that I didn't have anyone, and then I did. She looked at the wall behind him, a drawing of a red Cadillac made with grains of rice. Ferdinand smiled. Yeah, that one's mine. Mr. Colton used to have a like that. Still does, actually. Claire felt cold all over. Back in the car, Henry whispered. Claire couldn't respond. She kept staring at the photo she'd taken. The boys in their overalls, the Cadillac in the background. Ferdinand is Lucas, she said, and Diego must be Caleb. They drove toward the agricultural fair only 20 minutes away. Claire was silent, gripping the photograph in her lap. I'm going to show it to him, she said, to Mr. Colton. The county agricultural fair was already in full swing by the time Claire and Henry arrived. Colorful banners flapped above rows of vendor tents. The smell of roasted peanuts and fresh hay lingered in the air, blending with laughter and country music pouring from the loudspeakers. Children ran past holding balloons. The scene was innocent, joyful, completely at odds with the storm building inside Claire. She clutched the photograph in her purse like a weapon. They found Colton's booth at the far end of the fairgrounds, beneath a large white tent marked Colton's Haven for Hope. A simple banner hung across the top. Photos of smiling children lined the tables. And then she saw him, Raymond Colton. Time had drawn deep lines across his face, but his posture was still proud, his expression warm and performative as he spoke to a couple reviewing brochures. His white hair was combed neatly, his tan slacks pressed, his every move deliberate. Claire waited until the couple walked away. Then she stepped forward. Mr. Colton. He turned. Politeness flickered across his face. Yes? I'm Claire Whitmore, and this is my husband, Henry. He paused, eyes scanning their faces. There was a moment, just a flicker, of recognition. Then it was gone. I'm sorry, he said. Should I remember you? Claire's voice trembled. Our sons, Lucas, Caleb, and Micah, were your students at Oak Ridge Elementary, 1981. Colton's eyes narrowed slightly. Ah, yes. I remember those boys. A tragedy, what happened. I was heartbroken when I heard they'd gone missing. You left town just before they disappeared. I did. Did you? His smile stiffened. Yes. Why? Claire opened her purse and pulled out the photo. She held it out. This picture was taken the day they disappeared. That morning. Look in the background. Colton took the photo. His gaze fell to the corner, the red Cadillac. He didn't speak for several seconds. That's not my car, he said finally. Could belong to anyone. Claire stepped closer. It's the same car you drove to school every day. Lucas was obsessed with it. He said it looked like a spaceship. Colton's hand tightened on the phone. Henry spoke up. Do you know 2 men named Ferdinand and Diego? They work at your farm. Colton blinked. Of course. They're like sons to me. Claire's voice was almost a whisper. Because they are. They're our sons. His expression darkened. I think you should leave, he said. They didn't. Instead, they walked the fairgrounds in silence until they reached the small outdoor stage where children from the farm were preparing for a performance. Then Claire saw him. Not Colton. Diego. He was speaking to someone backstage, walking quickly, nervously. Henry touched her arm. There, she nodded. We need to speak to him. They followed him discreetly, weaving through tents until he stopped near the back of the event grounds. Claire stepped forward. Excuse me? Diego turned, startled. Yes? My name is Claire Whitmore. This is my husband, Henry. Diego frowned, uncertain. We knew you when you were very little, Claire said. He smiled politely. I think you must be mistaken. You have brothers, she said. One is named Ferdinand. The other is named Marco. Diego's face changed. How do you know that? Claire reached into her purse and... That's you. With your brothers, On the last day you were all together, that morning. Outside our house. Diego stepped closer, squinting. His expression softened, then shifted into confusion. This is us. Yes, but I don't understand. Mr. Colton told us. He shook his head. He said our parents were in prison, that we were abandoned, that we were rescued. Claire's voice cracked. That was a lie, Henry added. You were taken. Diego's breath caught. But why? Claire's hands were trembling now. We've been looking for you for 30 years. That night they met again, this time at the police station. The sheriff's department had agreed to question Colton based on Claire's testimony, the photo, and the revelation that Ferdinand and Diego believed they were orphaned children of criminals. Claire sat in a small, quiet room, the air smelling of stale coffee and vinyl. Ferdinand entered first. He hesitated at the door, then stepped inside. Claire stood. There was silence. Then she held up a drawing. It was a spaceship. Crayon on faded paper, his signature at the bottom. Ferdinand Lucas, stared at it for a long moment. Then tears welled in his eyes. I remember drawing that, Claire nodded. I kept it. He stepped forward. And suddenly he was hugging her. I didn't know, he whispered. I didn't know. Then came the final twist of the... Are there 3 of you? Henry asked gently. Diego nodded. Marco lives at the private estate, the other property. He handles the youngest kids. Henry's voice was tight. That's Micah, Ferdinand, Lucas added. He's quieter than us, always has been. Claire wiped her eyes. He always loved helping the smaller children. A detective entered the room. We have the address. Officers are en route now. Claire pressed a hand to her heart. Henry took her hand. They waited. The sun had barely touched the horizon when Claire and Henry reached the edge of the second property. Unlike the public farm, this place felt wrong. There were no signs. No laughter, no children running, just silence. 2 sheriff's vehicles were already parked near a rusted gate. A third pulled up behind them. An officer met Claire at the entrance. Stay back until we give the all clear. She nodded, clutching Henry's hand. They waited in the car, hearts pounding, eyes fixed on the old colonial-style house in the distance. And then they saw him. A young man, thinner than Ferdinand and Diego, with a quiet, unsure expression. Curly black hair, smaller eyes, hesitant posture. Micah. Claire gasped, covering her mouth. It's him? It's him? He stood near the front steps, flanked by 2 officers. Around him were 8 children, most under 10, all with frightened faces. An officer opened the passenger door. Mrs. Whitmore, would you like to speak to him? Claire stepped out slowly, Henry at her side. They approached gently. Micah looked up, confused. Claire's voice was soft. Micah? He blinked. That's not my name. It is, she said. You were born on February 15th, 1975. You had 2 brothers, Lucas and Caleb. You loved peanut butter crackers and hated thunderstorms. You used to sleep with a red flashlight under your... Micah's lips parted. Claire reached into her bag and pulled out something small. A worn flashlight. I found it in your box. I kept everything, he then whispered, just like that. You are our son. Micah's body shook. Tears welled up in his eyes. And then he whispered, I don't understand. Claire wrapped her arms around him. You don't have to. Not right now. Raymond Colton was arrested at 3:42 p.m. He didn't resist. But his face said everything, contained fury, panic. As the deputies cuffed him and read his rights, Claire stood behind them, holding the photograph in one hand and the flashlight in. This was never yours to keep. He didn't look at her. But as they led him away, Ferdinand and Diego, now reunited with Micah, stood behind her. Colton paused just once, looking at the 3 men he had raised under a lie. I saved you. His voice was cold. You stole us. Back at the police station, the unraveling began. Detectives found a locked drawer in Colton's office. Inside, original birth certificates for Lucas, Caleb, and Micah Whitmore, dozens of photos of the boys from age 6 to adulthood. The original license plate from the red Cadillac 3, altered medical records with fabricated names. A sealed envelope labeled, "In case of my death." In it a letter. I couldn't bear the silence of my house after the fire. My wife, my sons, all gone. I saw them, your boys, and it was like life returned. I had no intention to hurt them. I only wanted to fill the emptiness. I gave them love, discipline, purpose. The world would never understand. R.C. Claire sat across from Detective Rhodes. Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled. He used our children to heal from his own loss. Rhodes nodded. He built an entire system around the lie, nonprofit status, farm deeds, grant applications, all under a shell name. Did he ever hurt them? Rhodes hesitated. We're still evaluating the younger children, but the triplets say he was strict, controlling. There are signs of emotional manipulation, possibly worse when they were younger. Claire closed her eyes. He convinced them we were criminals. He groomed them to distrust the outside world. He created a version of reality where only he was safe. Later that night, Claire stood in the hospital hallway while doctors evaluated Micah and the children from the house. Ferdinand, Lucas, sat beside her, fidgeting with a stress ball someone had handed him. He looked up. "Do you remember the Christmas tree made of Legos?" Claire smiled. "You used red pieces for lights. Then Micah took them off and said they were too bright." He laughed softly. "I remember now." Diego, Caleb, joined them with 3 cups of coffee. "They're coming back," he said. "The memories." Slowly. "I thought I was crazy earlier, but now—" Claire looked at both of them. "You are ours." No matter what he said. No matter how long it takes. 3 days after the arrest, Claire prepared dinner for 5 people for the first time in 30 years. It wasn't fancy, just roasted chicken, potatoes with rosemary, and the same corn casserole the boys used to love. She hadn't cooked it in decades. She wasn't even sure if they'd remember the taste, but she made it anyway. At 6:15 p.m., they arrived, Lucas, Caleb, and Micah. Men now, adults shaped by a different world, raised by a different man. But they stepped into the Whitmore home like ghosts touching something familiar. Their eyes moved across the pictures on the walls, the worn couch, the small wooden table near. Micah paused in the hallway, tracing a finger across a framed photo of the 3 of them as toddlers in a bathtub. "I remember this." "Just a flash," he said. "But yes, I remember crying because I didn't want to share the rubber duck." Lucas added, "You bit him." Micah smirked. I was territorial. They laughed. It was the first sound that didn't carry weight or sorrow. At dinner, the conversation was slow at first, awkward, as if everyone was afraid that laughter might erase what had been lost. But then Caleb asked, "Did I really want to be a magician?" Claire nodded. "You used to make everyone sit in the living room while you pulled jelly beans from your ears." "Lucas was always your assistant, until he started demanding half the..." Lucas grinned. Entrepreneurial spirit. Micah looked down at his plate, quieter than the others. Claire noticed the way he held his fork, the exact way Henry did. It almost broke her. After dinner, they sat in the living room. Henry brought out the old photo albums, the ones they'd been too afraid to open for years. They flipped through them together. There were gasps of recognition, long silences, and a few quiet tears. Lucas stopped at one page. "Wait." He pointed to a Polaroid of the 3 of them at a park, wearing capes made from pillowcases. "This, I remember." Claire leaned in. "You flew off the slide and landed on Caleb." "I broke his tooth," Lucas said softly. We both cried. "You cried more," Caleb corrected. They smiled. Then Micah stood. "I want to show you something." He went out to the car and returned with a canvas bag. He pulled out a red toy car. Old, chipped, missing one wheel. Claire's breath caught. "That's..." "Caleb's," Micah nodded. Colton kept it in a glass box in his study. He told me it was a relic. I never understood why he valued it so much. Claire reached for it, but stopped. "It's yours now," she said. "It always was." Micah held it for a moment, then placed it gently on the mantel. Before they left that night, Caleb pulled Claire aside. "I found something," he said, "back at the farm." He reached into his coat and handed her a small leather-bound book. Colton's handwriting was unmistakable. She sat down and opened it. Inside were entries, spanning years. October 1993. They asked about their parents again. I told them what I always do. It felt wrong, but if I tell them the truth now, I'll lose everything. June 1997. Micah still asks about the woman in his dreams. He draws her sometimes. Always the same eyes. March 2001. They deserve to know. I keep writing letters I never send. July 2003. One day I will tell them when I'm ready. When I'm brave enough. Claire closed the book, tears rolling down her cheeks. Henry sat beside her. He wanted to give them back, she whispered. He just never found the courage. That night she lay awake again. But this time there was something else inside her chest. Not closure, not yet, but something close. Hope. Spring in Asheville arrived late that year. The cherry trees bloomed 2 weeks behind schedule, and the river by the trail near the Whitmore's neighborhood ran quieter than usual. Slower, like it was listening. Claire stood in the backyard on a Saturday morning, her hands brushing the fabric of the green and yellow quilt spread out over the patio table. She smoothed it with care. Everything had to be just right. Today wasn't a celebration, not in the traditional sense. But it was something, a beginning. Henry stood by the grill talking softly with Caleb. Lucas was in the kitchen, helping carry out dishes. And Micah. He was under the oak tree at the edge of the yard, carefully arranging something on a small wooden bench. Claire walked over. "What are you doing?" "I found the same flashlight in a thrift shop downtown. Not the same one from when I was little, but close. I thought we could put it next to the red car, like markers of who we were." "And what we're building now." Claire nodded, eyes. "They're perfect." She reached down and squeezed his hand. "I'm glad you came." At exactly 4 p.m., the photographer arrived, just like she had 30 years ago. But this time, it wasn't 3 boys in matching overalls. It was 3 grown men, their mother and father. Claire stood in the middle between Lucas and Micah. Caleb wrapped an arm around Henry's shoulder. "Ready?" the photographer asked. They nodded. The shutter clicked. Inside, the photo would later be framed and placed on the mantel. Right beside it, a small red toy car and a flashlight. And just beneath it, on a handwritten note card, Claire had written, "We lost 30 years, but not everything." Later that evening, after the guests had left and the kitchen was clean, Claire stood in the hallway alone. Her fingers trailed along the photos on the wall, and then she reached the one that started it all. The photo from that morning in 1981. 3 boys in checkered green overalls, yellow straps, bare feet on warm pavement, the red Cadillac in the corner. She held the image in her hands and slowly turned it over. On the back, someone, maybe her, maybe Henry, had once written a single word, home. Claire smiled through tears and whispered, "Now it is again."